the new Windows Azure. We're going to be spending the most of the time today going over kind of a general overview of what some of the major new features are in Windows Azure, and spending a little more time covering the new Windows Azure preview portal. As you guys know, my name is Michael Collier. I'm the Windows Azure National Architect for Neudesic and also a Windows Azure MVP. If you want to get a hold of me, you can definitely email me at michael.collier@neudesic.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Michael Collier as well. And if you want some more Windows Azure information, definitely check out my blog at michaelscollier.com. It's pretty much a Windows Azure focused blog. So if you guys have been kind of following Microsoft and Windows Azure recently, you've noticed that Microsoft had a kind of a pretty big event on June 7th in San Francisco called Meet Windows Azure. They kind of went into the heart, so to speak, of non-Microsoft friendly territory in San Francisco, and kind of showed people some of the new things that they've been working on, showing them the new Windows Azure virtual machines and Windows Azure websites, and showing how they have a new set of tools and capabilities now where you can deploy and manage your applications not just with the kind of standard Microsoft technology stack, but also with an Apple OS X or Linux operating systems, and maybe using Git for your deployment as well. So really kind of deviating from the traditional Microsoft technology stack and showing, hey, that the Windows Azure platform is very open and available for you to do lots of different things that you want to do on there. One of the founders of Leads of Twilio was also there, kind of shows some cool new things that they're working on in partnerships with Windows Azure. And you can definitely go out to meetwindowsazure.com and view some of the video sessions from that day, some of the Chalk Talks, kind of very brief overviews on some of the features that they announced. So Meet Windows Azure is kind of the unveiling of some of these things, and that continued on into TechEd recently, where Microsoft went deeper into the content of Windows Azure virtual machines and websites and a bunch of new features with the platform. And we'll be covering some of those new features as well over the next several Neudesic webcasts. So the biggest features coming out of the last about a month and a half with Microsoft and Windows Azure we have here on the screen. We have the new HTML5 based portal, and we're going to be spending some time today talking about that. You have the new cloud services. Cloud services is kind of a new term for what was previously known as hosted services if you've been doing Windows Azure work for a while. We also have new Windows Azure websites. Websites offer a very quick, easy way to get applications, web applications, up and running on the Windows Azure platform. Get them up in a matter of seconds. We'll see a very quick demo of that today. We'll spend another webcast diving deeper into websites. And then virtual machines gives you the infrastructure as a service play, so to speak, within the Windows Azure platform, giving you basically full control of a persistent virtual machine, whether it's a Microsoft operating system in Windows Server 2008 or Windows Server 2012, or even a Linux system like maybe Ubuntu or something like that you want to run. You can have all those options within the Windows Azure platform. So let's talk a little bit now about the new HTML-based portal with Windows Azure. This is a preview portal that they have, which is kind of showing you the future of what the new management portal in Windows Azure is going to look like. It's definitely a step, I think, in the right direction as far as usability is concerned. You had the Silverlight portal, which offered a lot of great features in it, but it did have the kind of caveat that you require Silverlight to work, or any sort of browser plugin. And as people kind of move into a tablet space with their iPads and the upcoming Windows 8 slates that don't allow plugins like Silverlight or Flash, we needed a way we could kind of still manage and look at our cloud applications. And as my colleague David Pallmann refers to the new portal, this is a way for cloud computing to meet couch computing, where you can sit on your couch in your living room with your Windows 8 slate or iPad and really kind of log into the Windows Azure portal and see what's going on with your websites, maybe make a couple of changes to your applications if you would like to as well. The Windows Azure, the new preview Windows Azure portal is definitely integral to all the new features that we're going to talk about as far as Windows Azure websites and virtual machines. The preview portal is the only place that you can manage those applications. So let's dive into take a kind of a quick look, kind of exploring around what the new portal can do. And the easiest way to get there, you can go to manage.windowsazure.com, or you can go straight into windowsazure.com as well and get there from both places. So I'm going to switch over now to my desktop, and we will see some of the new features with Windows Azure. I'm just going to log out. I want to log back. I want to kind of show you kind of how you actually get in to the new portal as well. So we'll just go to windowsazure.com, kind of the main marketing landing page for Windows Azure. And then I'm just going to click on the upper right-hand corner here where you see Portal. We're going to go ahead and click on that. And that's automatically going to take me over to manage.windowsazure.com. If you notice my browser URL has changed. This is going to load up the new Windows Azure-based portal. A couple things I want to point out to you right away. If you log into the site and you have not activated Windows Azure websites or virtual machines, you're going to need to activate those because they're not going to appear in your left navigation menu. So I want to show you real quick how you get over to this because they are kind of an opt-in situation because they are in a preview status currently. So we're going to click on my name to drop down the top bar here, and I'm going to click on Account. I'm going to be asked to log in with my Microsoft account again. And you'll see here I have my normal Microsoft account or Microsoft way to kind of view my subscriptions in Windows Azure. And there's a pretty obvious icon here for a link for preview features. So I want to look at preview features that are available. And you see here the 3 preview features that you can opt into to make them available for your subscription. So I will have Windows Azure Media Services. We'll touch on that a little bit later. Windows Azure Virtual Machines and Virtual Networks, and Windows Azure Websites. All 3 of them I have already activated and signed up for. So already on my subscription, but if you want to, you can activate and apply to get in for those as well. It shouldn't take very long. I think they're moving people through that provisioning process pretty quickly. So with those activated, I'm going to go back over to the portal. I'll let this load here. We're going to kind of take a quick tour around some of the new features within the Windows Azure portal. So if you notice kind of right away, it is much more of a Metro type of interface, if you will. It's kind of getting the same Metro treatment that a lot of Microsoft properties are now getting. On the left-hand side, you have a standard kind of navigation section here where I can kind of view the different aspects and features of the Windows Azure platform, from websites to MySQL database, Windows Azure storage, to media services. On the bottom, I have your application bar. So if you worked with Windows Phone, you probably have seen this type of idea as well, where they have an application bar here. That is kind of context sensitive. It's going to show me information that I can take some sort of action on whatever is displayed in the screen. And in the middle section here is my dashboard, where I can kind of view information about all the different services I have in Windows Azure. And there's also a way in here I can sort application, sort by location, sort by any of the header options that you have. So if I want to see what's going on, I can do that. Or if I want to do a quick search, I can search by the names. So if I want to search for, let's see, anything starts with MC, any of my services, I can do a quick search in there and filter down so exactly the services that I have that start with MC. So kind of a nice way to get into some of those services as well. On the bottom toolbar, we can see here we have a new option. And if I can create something new that's a website, a virtual network, cloud service, and so forth that you see here. The toolbar is context aware, and as we kind of move through this, you'll see the content that is in this toolbar kind of change based on what we're doing within the Windows Azure portal. So I can do a new website in here, virtual network, all sorts of different things from here. If I want to look at, there's also a help, which I think is very nice. And here it gives you a little bit of help. I can kind of say I want to help creating a new website, virtual machine, what have you in there. If I want to look at just individual areas, I can maybe take a look at my Windows Azure storage and just see storage, or if I have any SQL databases, I can look at those as well. We'll dive more into these here websites and virtual machines coming up. You notice in here that since we are in SQL databases, the context has changed now at the bottom. It's to say I can add, manage, or delete whatever context I'm on. So I'm going to look at what SQL databases, I can take that action there. And the help should change as well to be context aware to where I'm at. So it definitely is a nice, more user-friendly experience. I can kind of see what's going on with my applications very easily and quickly figure out what I have to work with. Now, it should be noted that while this is a preview portal, it's not a production-ready version, I guess, of the portal. It is still preview, and it does say preview at the top. If you do need to get access to the previous portal, simply click on or hover over the preview portal site, and then you can go take me to the previous portal, which will redirect you over to windows.azure.com, which is the Silverlight-based portal. And if you want to give some feedback to Microsoft on how you think this new portal should look and how something maybe that don't work or some things you like added, definitely go ahead and click the link to give them feedback. I do want to point out as well, because I've seen some people go into the new preview portal and look for things that are in the previous portal, the Silverlight-based portal. Not everything that's in the Silverlight current edition of the portal has been migrated over to the new preview portal. There are some things like managing your certificates for management certificates, or how you kind of work with the Windows Azure API remotely. That is adding or deleting those management certificates is something that can only be done in the Silverlight portal today, as is working with co-administrators for your subscription. And there's a few other things that can only be done in the Silverlight portal. So those features will gradually make their way likely over to the new preview portal as Microsoft continues to rev this. And as you kind of watch it, you'll see features kind of slowly light up as they add on more and more capabilities to the preview portal. Likewise, Windows Azure Virtual Machines and Windows Azure websites are only manageable from this preview portal, the HTML portal. They are not manageable from the Silverlight portal. So let's jump back and kind of continue on with kind of our tour of some of the new things we have with Windows Azure. Switch back into PowerPoint here. So we're seeing the portal. If you have an iPad or a Windows 8 slate, you can bring that up and definitely see how it does respond. Kind of a reactive response mode there. We can see the portal dynamically adjusting to the view area that it has to make it much easier to work with. So we talk about a platform as a service, or the service model we typically come to know and love with the Windows Azure platform. We see that we had our typical compute roles, our web and worker roles, is how we would get our websites out to the cloud, or maybe do some worker type background data processing type applications. We have our database with SQL database and SQL database reporting and SQL database sync as well. Had those nice platform features there as a service. We have storage, very robust, highly available, durable storage and tables, blobs, and queues. We could leverage the CDN feature based off Windows Azure blobs to give us static or dynamic content that we can cache worldwide at, I think, about 26 edge cache nodes today. We could work with identity and access control services, or ACS, where I wanted to leverage Facebook, Yahoo, Windows Live, Google. I could have a service where I could do a federated identity with access control services. We have Windows Azure caching, which is kind of cache as a service, and we'll talk a little bit about some upgrades, some changes to the caching service coming up as well. Windows Azure Traffic Manager, Windows Azure Connect, which gave me virtual networking capabilities in the cloud. So allowed me to kind of connect my on-premises servers to my Windows Azure servers. And also give me a way with Traffic Manager to distribute my application worldwide and have customers route to the appropriate data center based off where they're coming from. So pretty nice service in that respect. And this service bus giving us enterprise availability for relay and durable messaging. So giving us standard queuing mechanisms, kind of a little more advanced queue than we have with Windows Azure storage queues, and also a way that we can do a pub sub type of model with those as well, and just kind of general relay messaging, kind of a way to get past network NATs and firewalls and stuff that might be a little more difficult to work without this technology. So we look at how we kind of manage some of these services. We had to kind of build out a declarative model where I would have a little bit different way to configure my application. So instead of in a typical .NET space having a web.config or app.config file, I have these two other configuration options, a service definition and a service configuration file. And a lot of that was due to the way we're managing our applications in a cloud environment. We're not managing just one or two servers. We're potentially managing hundreds or thousands of instances of our applications. So we needed a way to declaratively kind of tell the system, Windows Azure, what kind of configuration needs to be applied to all these services, all potentially thousands of them, all at one time. So kind of raising that out from the machine level to be more of a service level feature. We have different topologies that we could work with, giving us the ability to have web roles and worker roles that could be separated into kind of logical presentation tiers and business logic tiers as well, kind of your typical in-tiered application. We could certainly do that with Windows Azure as well. We had a package as a nice way to deploy your application, became a service package file. A little bit different than maybe people would do it with service with MSIs before. Again, kind of going back to the way we have to deploy applications. We're talking about not one or two, but potentially thousands of instances we need to get our application out to. We would use Windows Azure the way to auto-patch our machines for us, so kind of managing the Azure operating system, or the Windows operating system for us, and to give us a way to handle upgrades in kind of a somewhat seamless manner through the upgrade domains. And also tying that into how we will be safe when we do that, be having triple redundancy within Windows Azure storage or SQL database, and fault domains, so ensuring that we have no single one plate of hardware failure in our system. We're going to have hardware that we can handle some sort of failure and still have our application be available. If we did need to scale out this model, we had options to do that with an API and also some auto-scaling application blocks as well. So we could handle all these things, but it wasn't without its detractors. While as robust as it was, people thought that there was a little bit of a learning curve to it, just kind of adopting Windows Azure as a platform model, as a platform as a service. There's a little bit of friction it's a change to how we would go about managing our applications and change to how we go about deploying them, and some new things to learn. And maybe we actually have to go ahead and change your application as well. Some applications could move very easily over with maybe no application changes, but to really take advantage of some of the features you have for the platform, you'd often have to make some changes to your application to really leverage the strengths of the platform. And some people really didn't like that. It was maybe a little bit disconnect that they did want to manage their own system. They wanted more control over the actual machines and the operating systems themselves. So it was a little bit different. There were some things you just couldn't do. Maybe I couldn't install certain server platforms like SharePoint or Exchange or Active Directory in the cloud, because it was the way the machines were handled, being stateless virtual machines with the platform as a service model. I couldn't do some of the things maybe I thought I should be able to do. Going back to the persistence model here, where maybe I would write to the local file system on the machine. Again, that's something that you wouldn't want to do with the platform as a service model with web roles and worker roles. And the model was designed to give you a scale-out scenario where I would have multiple machines, so that if any one machine failed, my application would still be available. But there was no way to really do a single instance story that was matched by any sort of financially backed SLA. Windows Azure's SLA was always you had to have 2 instances to meet the SLA. So Microsoft's looking at a way that we can kind of change this model and evolve and kind of give people a full spectrum of control and flexibility in what they want to do with. We had our cloud services, which worked really well for a lot of applications. But there people would also want to say, oh, I want virtual machines. I want infrastructure as a service where I can manage that application and manage that machine, really. I want you to just give me a Windows machine or a Linux machine, and I want to install my software on it and manage it and configure it how I want to do it. I'll be responsible for it. You just make sure it's up and running. And then there's Windows Azure websites. Windows Azure websites basically take away even more control from you. And for some applications, that works perfectly well. If I just want a very simple website up and running, maybe it's a blog, like a blogging platform like WordPress or a CMS type of system. Maybe it's just a simple OData service that I want to deploy, an OData service that is backing with SQL database. I don't really care as much about the underlying infrastructure of machines. I just have a very simple website. I want to get out there. Windows Azure websites can help me with that. We'll see both of the examples of websites and virtual machines coming up today, as well as in future webcasts. This really gives you the full spectrum of how you want to manage your applications, where I want somebody to manage that for me completely with Windows Azure websites, where I just want to write the code and deploy it, and that's cool. I go into my traditional web roles and worker roles, where I really don't have to worry about the machines that much either, but I have the ability to do some things. I can remote desktop into the web roles and worker roles, and I can manage IIS via the app command, kind of script out some things, and I can install third-party products on them. So I have a little bit more control there. But if I really want full control and I want full management of my system, I can go down to all the way over to Windows Azure virtual machines, and I have that ability where I can do basically whatever I need to do or want to do with that. So now with Windows Azure as a platform, we have really the full spectrum on how you want to manage your applications and how much control you want to have. You have lots of options now, which is, I think, really exciting. So let's take a quick look here at Windows Azure virtual machines. The idea with Windows Azure virtual machines is really to give you a couple of different options to get started really easily. One approach you could take is to say that, I want to go ahead and I want to create a new VM image from the image gallery. So there could be virtual machines in my gallery that maybe it's a Windows Server operating system, Windows Server 2012, or a Linux system. I don't want to have to install the operating system. I just want to go ahead and say Microsoft's going to provide that system for me, and I just want to create that new VM. I can also start with an image there in the cloud, and I can actually add to that image. So called a cloud composition, or maybe I have a Windows Server operating system there, and I want to install some applications, or maybe it's my applications or some third-party applications. I can install those applications on that VM. I can then go ahead and configure that system. I can sysprep that virtual machine and capture that and store that in Windows Azure Blob Storage and use that for future use. The nice thing is with all these virtual machines is they have a high degree of image portability as well. So I could take maybe a VHD that I have created on premises. I'm running Hyper-V today, and I have a VHD that my application is running on. I can simply take that application and move it to the cloud. I take that VHD file and I just upload that to Windows Azure Blob Storage, create a virtual machine there, and using that VHD, the virtual hard disk, as the operating system disk, get that application up, or that machine up and run based off that virtual hard drive. Same way, if I had an image created in the cloud, I could take that image, that VHD, because all Windows Azure virtual machines is really just a VHD file. Take that VHD file and bring that back down to my on-premise environment, run it there. So it gives me the ability where I could really move my application and my virtual machines between my on-premises data center and the cloud, giving me a real kind of portability and flexibility in how and where I want to run my solution. It's really easy to get started with this. I can go out to the Windows Azure portal. The management portal will see that coming up here in the demo. Or I can go ahead and create a new machine pretty easily from there. I can also go ahead and script it out if I want to programmatically do things, maybe on the fly via some other action kicks that off or some other agent. I can have Windows Azure PowerShell commandlets to do that. And there's command line interfaces written in Node.js, so I can do this from a Linux or an Apple OS X operating system as well. I can pick out what size of virtual machine I have. It's the same virtual machines we have with Windows Azure Web Roles and Worker Roles, from small up to extra large. And then I say, what type of operating system would I like? Is it a Microsoft operating system? You have to be at least Windows Server 2008 or higher on those. They provide images already ready to go for you there. Or I go with a Linux-based system as well, and I can pick that from one of Microsoft's partners that is working with them to go ahead and create that Linux system. From there, I can go ahead, provision that system, provision that image, and then I can manage individual virtual machines. Now, I just have an individual virtual machine that I can do whatever I want with. If it's installing SharePoint or Active Directory or Exchange, I can do that with Windows Azure virtual machines. I can use this machine however I need to manage that. And all the nice thing about this is the VMs are persistent, which is a little bit different than maybe web roles or worker roles or VM roles that you may have seen before with Windows Azure. Windows Azure virtual machines do use Windows Azure Blob Storage as a way to persist and safely store that data, taking advantage of Windows Azure Blob Storage, triple replication within the data center, and geo-replication across Windows Azure data centers if you so choose. So you have that nice persistent mechanism there to work with. Let's take a quick look at creating a virtual machine here. So I'm going to switch back over to the management portal. So I look at the management portal here. I'm going to go into virtual machines. Remember, you have to kind of opt into the virtual machine service or feature within Windows Azure. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. So I'm going to do new. I'm going to do a virtual machine. And let's go ahead and look at the gallery, do a creation from the gallery. You can see in here where Microsoft has different versions of Windows Server available. There's a Windows Server 2008 R2 image already ready, and it has SQL Server 2012 Evaluation Edition on it. It's the Evaluation Edition because the system is still in a preview mode. If I want, I can use Windows Server 2008. They got different release dates for those. I also can use Windows Server 2012 if I like. A couple different release dates are those. So these images, the Microsoft images, are maintained and patched by Microsoft. They're going to constantly keep these up to date so they would have the latest patches on them. And if I want, I can also go down and look at my SUSE or OpenLogic or Ubuntu, as well as different images I can pick from. You see in here I have an image called My New Image. I can also, this image library stores my own custom images as well that I've created. So I'm going to go ahead and pick let's pick a Windows Server 2012, June 2012 edition. We'll go ahead and do that for fun. And let's give it a virtual machine name. Let's say MC VM Demo 1. I have to give it a password. This is my administrative password. And then I pick what size of virtual machine I would like. So let's go with a medium size virtual machine. Go ahead and click next on that. We'll give it a DNS name to start with. So we'll say mcvmdemo1.cloudapp.net. I'm going to let it automatically create a storage account for me, or I can go ahead and pick one. So I know I already have a couple of storage accounts out there, so I'm going to go ahead and pick this storage account. We'll say where I want my virtual machine to run, and pick a Windows Azure subscription as well. I'm going to just let it create one for me, and I want to change my subscription. There we go. So go ahead and do that. And one of the things if you've noticed here, when I say use automatically generated storage account, you do get a storage account name that is portal VHD and then some series of letters and numbers. So it's not exactly the most user-friendly one, but it is an auto-generated one. If you have a storage account, you go ahead and pick a storage account as well if you wanted. Go ahead and let's just quickly create through this. So it's going to take a few minutes for this to go ahead and create that Windows Azure virtual machine for me. So you can see in here it's provisioning this machine. Here, I can't really do anything with it right now besides delete it. But I have another virtual machine here. Let's go ahead and click on this one. And this is another one I've created, another Windows Server 2012 machine. And this kind of shows you some of the features we have available within the portal to kind of show how my application is behaving, what's going on. But I can see some kind of metrics on the application, in this case for the last year here. If I want, I can drop down and say, look at the last 7 days of metrics for this machine. And Windows Azure is going to pull that information back and show me some of that. I can see in here how many cores I'm using. I can see what my OS disk is, and also a link to the virtual hard drive here on the system showing me that application. If I want, I can go into the endpoint section, and I can add, edit, or delete new endpoints. So in this case, by default, you have remote desktop enabled, but if I needed other ones, like maybe I wanted to go ahead and add an endpoint here for HTTP or UDP or TCP, I could go ahead and do that as well. If I wanted to, I can change the virtual machine size. I have those options in there as well. So I can do a lot of different things within the virtual machine section here as well. If I need to, I can go ahead and connect into this virtual machine using remote desktop, just like you'd kind of expect to be able to do that, and I just get prompted to download an RDP file. So go ahead and cancel that. That's kind of the basics of Windows Azure virtual machines as well. You can also, just one quick thing we should point out is you have the option here to attach a disk. So you have an operating system, a data disk. So if I wanted to attach additional hard drives to my Windows Azure virtual machine, I could go ahead and attach a disk here that would be going out storing in a new VHD in Windows Azure Blob storage. That would be like an F drive or something like that to my Windows Azure virtual machine that I could work with. So pretty easy to get going on those. We see our machine here is still provisioning, so it does take a few minutes to provision a new virtual machine. So while that's going on, let's go ahead and continue on with some of the stuff we have. Let's look at Windows Azure websites. So let's kind of wrap up, I guess, real quick on the virtual machines. And the idea with virtual machines is to give you an additional range of options, right? So we see that we can create a virtual machine, so Windows Server 2008 or Server 2012 or a Linux-based system. And since it is persistent to blob storage, I now have the option to install server products and single server solutions like SharePoint, SQL Server, Exchange, Active Directory. Additional features and server solutions will be coming online and be supported solutions in the future as Microsoft continues to rev virtual machines and probably as they approach general availability for virtual machines. I think one of the really nice features about virtual machines, though, is it gives me that high portability for my VHDs, and that gives me the option of how and where I really want to move my system around. So now I'm not kind of locked into only running in the cloud or only running on premises. I can really move that VHD around to wherever I need to go. Obviously, it's going to take a little time to move several gigabytes of data across the internet, but it does give me that option that I could do that as well, which is really nice. There's really nothing new or different to add to the machines. If you've worked with Windows Azure VM roles before, you had to install a Windows Azure agent on those VMs. With Windows Azure virtual machines, that's no longer the case. So that's Windows Azure Web virtual machines. Now let's take a look at the other spectrum, Windows Azure websites. And the idea with websites is to really make it a lot easier for you to get going. So Microsoft wanted to have a couple of different ways here. We could get going pretty quickly with solutions like maybe Joomla or WordPress, and really do so without really having to change anything or do anything out of the ordinary. It shouldn't feel like a heavy cloud solution or something cloud specific to you. I want to take my applications and really write them the way that I've been writing them and deploy them, and not really have to care that this is a cloud, quote unquote cloud solution. So what I did here is really combine both of these ideas, and the idea came Windows Azure websites. The goal with websites is that you can create a website in a matter of seconds. It's something that you can do yourself, something that's going to be very easy to do. We'll see that quickly in the demo coming up as well. Or you can select from a gallery, just like we saw the gallery with Windows Azure Virtual Machines. We have the gallery with Windows Azure websites where I can pick from a multitude of partners that Microsoft has. I have a choice of languages that I want to write, so I can use classic ASP, ASP.NET, PHP, or Node, and there'll be more languages probably coming on as well. And if you want to see more, I would encourage you to submit that feedback to Microsoft. I can choose my database, being SQL database or MySQL. So if I want to do WordPress, I can pick WordPress from the gallery, and I can choose MySQL. Microsoft will go ahead and create that on my behalf via one of their partners, ClearDB. And I can do all my development on Windows OS X or Linux, which is really nice as well. So I kind of, whatever you want to do, you have that flexibility from language to development platform. And if I want to deploy, it's a matter of seconds to deploy. I can automatically deploy my code using TFS. If you use Git, I can set up a Git repo and push that application to Git, have it be pushed right into Windows Azure websites as well. So it gives you that very continuous feedback you have. There's a dashboard that we'll see. That's very similar to the Windows Azure Virtual Machine dashboard, kind of showing me utilization on my instances there. And the nice thing is going to be options for scalability as well. So we'll see here I have options in how I want to scale out or up my Windows Azure website. So the scaling options, you have a shared and reserved options to work with. In a shared, you're kind of a fish in a larger pool. You're a single tenant in a multi-tenant pool. And the shared option to scale gives you the ability to handle more requests, not actually increase performance. So I scale out, right, and not up. I don't get a bigger machine. I just get more of the same. There is a quota limit, so I wouldn't use a shared instance for a super high volume site because there is a certain number of requests and traffic that the system is going to allow you to handle in a shared site. And I get 10 for free for the life of the preview. I would imagine that would continue after the preview status, but there's no commitment on that. It just still is preview, so they're kind of trying some things out. So that's really nice there. You get 10 free websites in a shared mode. It'd be great for blogs, lots of different applications there. If I do need a little bit of more advanced features, I can go to reserved instances for Windows Azure websites, where in that case I pick out a virtual machine size that I want. It's just to me on that virtual machine, on that VM, just you, and I can pick what size I need, so I can get a increased performance because I have a bigger, more and larger machines. And then since I'm the only person in that sandbox, so to speak, there's no quota limit there as well, so I can hit the system site as hard as I want. And I do pay standard Windows Azure compute rates for that. A couple of nice things I want to throw in here to mention as well is you have your normal web.config settings that you can work with, but you also have the ability for Windows Azure websites to set some application settings via the portal. A nice thing is those get kind of merged in with whatever your web.config settings are and presented back to you when I call the configuration management APIs that you normally would. That information gets stored in a database in Windows Azure websites. So it's really kind of transparent to you as to how it works. You just know that I can manage these things right from the portal, these configuration settings right from the portal if I want. If you do need a custom domain name, like you do want michaelcollier.com for your blog, you'd have to go to reserved instances. Right now, custom domain names are only available on reserved instances. That's one of the feature differentiators between the two. And there is no SSL support yet. I think that would be something that's coming. I think Microsoft has heard that feedback on the SSL support and is working, towards that. But keep in mind, this is still a preview status for Windows Azure websites. So definitely submit that feedback to Microsoft on what you would like to see coming up. Let's take a quick look at Windows Azure websites. So we'll go back into our management portal here. If I go to the websites section, you see here I see the websites that I've listed. And well, I want you to point out one thing real quick. And this little green bar down here, this is kind of a health or an activity indicator of what's going on. So this will change from 2 to 3 to 4 as different things are going on, kind of give you a status of what was happened and kind of showing you some more details of that as well. So I noticed I wanted to point that out real quick. So let's go ahead in here and let's go ahead and let's go to the new website. Let's create a new website from the gallery, just to show off a quick option there. So let's go ahead and you see here we have different options for CMS or systems they have. And here we'll go ahead and do a WordPress site. Do next on that, and we'll give it a quick name, mcwordpress.azurewebsites.net. We'll say that I want to, let's go to this here. I'm going to say a new subscription or a new MySQL database running in the Eastern U.S. data center and a particular subscription that I have. Go ahead and click next on that. It's going to create a MySQL database for you, so it's kind of generating a name. You can kind of see the first part of the name is the first part of the website that I wanted to create. Again, running in the East data center. And I need to agree to terms here that Microsoft is working with a partner, ClearDB, to create the MySQL database for you. Go ahead and click next on that. And you'll notice that our progress indicator, activity indicator down here started to go off. So we can kind of click on that and see that it successfully created the other virtual machine that we were working on. So that's good. So we'll go ahead and let's get rid of that guy. And we're now deploying the WordPress site to site MC WordPress. So it's going to take a few seconds for that to get provisioned. While it's going on there, I can't really do anything with this guy, so I'm probably deleting it. If I was looking at a different website, maybe this one, I can see I have options to browse it, stop it, delete it, and also download it to Web Matrix. So we'll give this guy a chance here to complete real quick. There we go. So that one's done. We get a little indicator at the bottom as well, just saying that the site was deployed, and I can view information on our configure page. So let's go ahead and click the little arrow here next to MC WordPress. Again, we get our dashboard here, kind of showing us information about our system. So let's go ahead real quick. Let's try to generate a little bit of traffic so we can see what's going on. So I'm going to click the Browse button. And here I just get the standard WordPress site that you would expect if you use WordPress, kind of their quick start where I give it a site name, a username, and password, and so forth. So at this point, it's looking just like a normal WordPress site that we would expect to get going. And here, I don't think we'll get any much traffic on this just yet. But if I wanted in here, let's take a look at the quick glance section. And here you can see I can view any connection strings I have for my database. So showing you here the connection string to the MySQL database that we created. If I want to set up TFS, I can click on that. So if I'm using the TFS Team Foundation service, I can add my information here to do that. If I want to do Git, I can set up that information. I can reset my deployment credentials. This could be like my FTP username or password, my Git username and password if I need to do that. I also download a publishing profile. This will download a .publish settings file that I could work with as well if I wanted to load that into something like Web Matrix or even Visual Studio to go ahead and deploy to my site. You can see here we're all running in a shared mode, and I have an FTP endpoint as well to work with. I can go over to the monitor section, show me some stats here. I see we got some of the stats pulled in here. Started to pull in. If I want, on here I can see configure what version of the framework I'm running, some diagnostics information, as well as my application settings and connection strings. And this is where on the Scale tab where I would go ahead and actually scale from a shared instance to a reserved instance if I needed to do that. And because it's a preview portal, it's going to not like me. For our demos, we'll say OK there. Let's see if we can get it back to that. There we go. Still in preview mode, so you get a little bit of hiccups on some things sometimes. So we'll do the website mode here. I say shared or reserved. If I did need to go shared and have a couple more instances, I can quickly drag this over and say it's 3 now, and then I can go ahead and save that. And it'll take a few seconds for that to complete, but then I have 3 instances now of my WordPress site that I could work with. So pretty easy to get up and going on that. If you didn't want to do a gallery option, I could always go to website and do a quick create, giving it a username and password. So the MC quick1, and we'll go ahead and change my subscription again, creating that website. And this should take just a couple of seconds for this one to create. There's really not going to be a whole lot there. That was pretty much up and done already. Let's go ahead and browse that, and you'll see kind of the default page for Windows Azure websites. So now at this point, I have a basic shell of a website created. If I wanted, I could use web deploy, FTP, Git, TFS, however I want to deploy my application. I could deploy that this way to my Windows Azure website. So very quick, very easy to get going on that. What's the big thing about Windows Azure websites? It's about its speed and familiarity, I think. I can get going with a Windows Azure website in a matter of seconds, as you saw, definitely less than a minute, which if you worked with Windows Azure in the past, I think that speed alone is going to be a very attractive option for you. It's very familiar. It's nothing kind of out of the ordinary, nothing kind of special you have to learn. It's very easy to get up and going, and I can use the tools that I want to use. If I want to use Git or TFS and have a continuous deployment cycle, I can do that very easily. And it's attractively priced, right? It's basically free for the shared instances right now, and really cheap as well for the reserved if you want to go there. So you have a lot of flexibility and options to work with there. With cloud services, spending a minute here on cloud services as we kind of wrap up, or get closer to wrapping up. Cloud services is the new name really for the hosted services, or Microsoft's platform as a service model. You see cloud services is the web roles and worker roles. We also have a little bit of a rebranding going on with SQL Azure. It's now called SQL Database. Same thing, just a new name, kind of going with the Windows Azure brand. We have Windows Azure Active Directory. Sorry, there's a typo there on the side. Windows Azure Active Directory is the new options you have for access control services. With Active Directory, which is available as a preview now, it gives you the option to do much more advanced identity management and kind of really taking Active Directory, making it available as a service in the cloud. You have Windows Azure Media Services also available as a preview, giving the ability to do transcoding videos and distributing of those videos as a service. If I have a original digital media file that I want to make available via smooth streaming or WMV file or an HTML5, one of the HTML5 compatible formats, I could do that with Windows Azure Media Services, basically uploading that file to Media Services, telling it what job I wanted to do, and letting Media Services do the crunching, so to speak, run the algorithms against that. Windows Azure Virtual Networking got expanded as well, giving me the ability to really extend my corporate enterprise to Windows Azure as a virtual network, kind of securing network communications between my hardware devices on premises and the Windows Azure cloud. So that makes that pretty nice there. And I can also take the virtual network and configure individual virtual machines that I have, and set the networking up on those machines, which could be how you might want to set something up. You want to do a SharePoint on a VM and maybe SQL Server on a VM. There's also a new role-based caching approach. Caching service that's available. So you have Windows Azure caching, kind of cache as a service. This is a new role-based one where I can take advantage of extra memory that I have in an existing web role, for instance, and I can use that, distribute that cache across all my instances in my web role. So we call that kind of co-located caching. Or if I wanted, I could set up a dedicated cache worker role where I buy by hour a extra small to extra large virtual machine, and I have caching running on that. So that's my cached instance there. And I can have multiple instances of those and just pay per hour for those. So I have options on how I want to do that, anywhere from basically not paying any extra for caching because I'm using my memory on an existing web role, or paying a little more to have dedicated virtual machines to that. It is compliant with Windows Server App Fabric Cache API, which is nice if you want to just move applications, or Memcache protocols as well. So if you're using Memcache in your application, you shouldn't have to change any of your caching logic to get this to work with Windows Azure, because it's compatible at the wire level there. So what's the big thing about cloud services? It's really, despite all the really nice new features we have in Windows Azure websites and virtual machines, Windows Azure Cloud Services, our traditional web roles and worker roles, are still, I think, the most capable form for Windows Azure. You give a lot of nice benefits to those, the auto-patching, the ability, how we manage our infrastructure, very little management of that actual underlying infrastructure, It can be really nice, and the scaling options that we have there as well. So a lot of nice positives to dealing with that. So this really does give you now with Windows Azure a kind of middle ground to work with, right? We have our websites to be very easy, cloud services sitting in the middle, and virtual machines giving me more control that I have. So the question becomes, when you're designing cloud applications in this new era, a new version of cloud with Windows Azure, what do you choose when you want to build out a new website? Do you want to look at a Windows Azure website? Do you want to look kind of in the middle at a cloud service, a platform as a service, or do you want to go to the other end and have a full-on virtual machine that you have responsibility for? And it's kind of really it's going to depend on your application. If I have a kind of a simple two-tier cookie cutter application, then maybe that is a Windows Azure website. It could fit perfectly well into that mold. If I have a multi-tier solution where I need maybe a little more control, a little more features than what a website gives me, then cloud services could be a great option if I want to take advantage of some of those unique platforms as a service features. But if I'm not quite ready yet maybe, or I need a little bit more control still, then I could look at Windows Azure virtual machines, and I could have these nice complex or hybrid type of solutions to work with, where I have a full-on virtual machine, and I can do with it however I see fit. So now I have this full spectrum to work with, which I think is really one of the nice, exciting things of the Windows Azure platform. If you want to learn more about Windows Azure, I just want to kind of throw up a couple of ways you can kind of take this kind of to the next level. Definitely check out the Chalk Talk videos at meetwindowsazure.com. I have a lot of good information there kind of from the initial unveiling of some of these features. Can't recommend enough going out to windowsazure.com and looking at the developer centers. Great information there on if you're a .NET developer or looking at from an Apple or a Linux type of background. Lots of good information there, different languages and platforms to learn how to use Windows Azure and take advantage of what you want to do. As I mentioned at the beginning, TechEd was where Microsoft really kind of had a deep dive on a lot of these features. Lots of good videos out there at TechEd on the Channel 9 site that you can go ahead, download the videos, download the PowerPoint slides, and see it from some of the product team members themselves on these applications. There's a few Windows Azure dev camps out on devcamps.ms/Windows Azure. More of those I expect to be coming soon. And of course, Neudesic will be having a series of upcoming webcasts covering much more in detail about each of the kind of topics we talked about today. So that's wrapping up towards the end of what I have. I think there's still a few minutes left where we could chat a little bit more about the new portal, the new services we have with cloud services, Windows Azure websites, or the Windows Azure virtual machines.
Great. Thank you, Michael, for this awesome presentation. As a reminder, to ask a question, please click on the Q&A verbiage located in the toolbar at the top left side of your screen, type your question, and then click the Ask button. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to click through a few polling questions, and we would greatly appreciate your feedback. The first question: was this content helpful for your business? Yes or no? Great, thank you. The next question: please rate the presentation content, excellent, good, or poor. All right, and it looks like, Michael, we did get a question come through. How are virtual machines billed? Per hour they are tuned on using resources, or per hour deployed?
Same as traditional Windows Azure web roles, so it's the same. It's a per hour deployed. You pay per hour for that virtual machine based off of the size that you have.
All right, thank you. And one last poll question I have. Would you like us to schedule a follow-up, yes or no? All right, if there's no more questions, thank you so much. We will be forwarding the link to view a recording of this webcast once it does become available. Again, thank you so much everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webcast. You are now free to disconnect. Thank you.